What if the doll you once cherished wasn't just a childhood keepsake, but a doorway to something far darker? Emma Harper was 6 years old the first time she met Clara. The doll wasn't hers. It belonged to her grandmother, who kept it locked in a glass case in the sitting room of her old Victorian house in Somerset. "She's special," her grandmother always said with a peculiar smile. But Emma had always found Clara unsettling. The doll had blue glass eyes that seemed too lifelike, golden curls that framed her delicate porcelain face, and a lace-trimmed dress too pristine for something so old. Whenever Emma looked at Clara, she felt the weight of those eyes, as if the doll was studying her. Years passed and Emma grew up, leaving Clara and her childhood behind. She forgot about the doll entirely, until her grandmother passed away. Emma inherited the house and, along with it, the eerie contents of the sitting room. She'd tried to sell the collection, but when it came to Clara, every prospective buyer backed out. "Bad energy," one woman said before fleeing the house. Emma didn't believe in curses or spirits, but Clara was unnerving enough that she stuffed the doll in the attic and forgot about her. Until the storm. The storm raged all night, battering the old house with howling winds and pelting rain. Emma, now 29 and living alone, had fallen asleep on the couch when a loud crash from upstairs jolted her awake. Grabbing a flashlight, she ventured into the attic. Boxes were toppled over, their contents spilled onto the floor, but in the center of the chaos sat Clara. The doll was upright, its dress immaculate despite the dust and grime surrounding it. Emma's breath hitched. "What the hell?" she muttered, shivering as a draft brushed her neck. She could have sworn she'd packed Clara deep in a box. But the doll stared back, silent and still. Shrugging off her unease, she carried Clara downstairs, intending to find a new place to store her. That night, as she tried to sleep, a faint whispering sound drifted through the house. "Emma!" Her eyes snapped open, her heart hammering. The sound was so soft it could have been the wind, or her imagination. She dismissed it and forced herself back to sleep. The next morning, Clara was no longer in the box. Emma found her sitting on the kitchen counter, her head tilted slightly to the side. Emma stared, chills prickling her skin. "I didn't put you there," she whispered, backing away. The strange occurrences grew worse. Objects in the house moved on their own. Books fell from shelves, cabinet doors creaked open, and lights flickered without reason. Every time Emma tried to ignore it, Clara seemed to appear somewhere new, perched on her desk, seated at the dining table, or lying at the foot of her bed. One night, Emma woke to the sound of giggling. It wasn't her laugh. She froze, gripping the sheets tightly, as the giggles turned into soft whispers. "Emma, come play." The voice was faint, but unmistakable. Trembling, she reached for her phone, its screen casting a pale glow in the dark room. When she turned on the flashlight, her stomach dropped. Clara was sitting on her bedside table. Emma screamed and threw the doll into the closet, slamming the door shut. But even then she could hear the faintest giggle, muffled yet chilling. Desperate for answers, Emma visited a local historian who specialized in antiques. When she showed him a photo of Clara, his face paled. "Where did you get this?" he asked, his voice tense. Emma explained the doll's history, leaving out the strange occurrences for fear of sounding crazy. This doll belonged to Lillian Carlisle, the historian said. She was a little girl in the 1890s who went missing. Her parents claimed she was abducted, but locals believed she died in a fire that consumed the Carlisle estate. The doll was the only thing recovered. He paused, his expression darkening. There are stories about Lillian's spirit being trapped in that doll. They say she seeks revenge, wanting someone to play with her forever. Emma's stomach churned. "That's ridiculous," she said, though her trembling hands betrayed her disbelief. The activity in the house escalated. Emma tried locking Clara in a trunk, burying her in the garden, even leaving her at a donation center miles away. But the doll always came back, more malicious than before. Doors slammed shut on their own. Dark, humanoid shadows slithered along the walls. At night, Emma could feel icy hands brushing her hair as she lay in bed, paralyzed with fear. The dreams began soon after. In them, a little girl with hollow eyes and charred skin stood at the foot of her bed, holding Clara. "Play with me," the girl whispered, her voice distorted and echoing. Emma woke, screaming, sweat dripping down her face. She couldn't live like this anymore. Emma contacted a medium who specialized in removing curses. The woman walked into the house and immediately froze. "This isn't just a curse," she said, her voice trembling. "The doll is a vessel, and whatever's inside it is angry." The medium performed a ritual, surrounding Clara with candles and chanting incantations. For a moment it seemed to work. The room grew heavy, the air crackling with energy. But then the candles blew out, and the room plunged into darkness. A guttural laugh echoed through the house, and Clara's glass eyes began to glow faintly. The medium screamed as an unseen force flung her across the room. "You can't get rid of me!" a voice shrieked, filling the house. Emma grabbed the doll and ran outside, tears streaming down her face. She doused Clara in gasoline and lit a match. The flames roared unnaturally high, turning green as they consumed the doll. But when the fire died down, Clara was untouched. The doll sat in the ashes, her dress immaculate, her eyes gleaming with triumph. Emma disappeared a week later. Her neighbors reported hearing strange noises coming from the house, but when authorities entered, they found it empty. The only sign of life was Clara, sitting on the mantel, her glass eyes staring forward, as if waiting for someone new. Would you dare keep a doll like Clara in your home? Do you believe in cursed objects? Share your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe to my channel for more spine-chilling tales and paranormal investigations. Hit the bell icon to stay updated. You never know when a new nightmare might strike. Have you ever felt like Halloween isn't just a holiday, but something darker? What if I told you that the scariest stories don't come from movies? They happen to people like you and me. Here's what happened to me on the 31st of October. I still don't know how I survived. Halloween has always been my favorite holiday. I love the decorations, the spooky atmosphere, and the chance to embrace the eerie side of life. But after what happened last year, I'll never look at October 31st the same way again. It was a chilly evening, and the streets were alive with costumed kids running from house to house, their laughter echoing in the crisp air. I had just moved into a small suburban neighborhood a month earlier. It was one of those picturesque places with tidy lawns, white picket fences, and pumpkin-lined porches. Being new, I was excited to join in the festivities. I went all out, decorating my house with cobwebs, fake skeletons, and a glowing jack-o'-lantern. I even dressed up as a witch, complete with a long black cloak and a pointed hat. As the night wore on, the trick-or-treaters thinned out, and the neighborhood grew quiet. By 10 p.m., I had blown out the jack-o'-lantern and started cleaning up. That's when the doorbell rang. I frowned, glancing at the clock. It was late for trick-or-treaters, but I figured it was a couple of teenagers hoping for some leftover candy. Grabbing the candy bowl, I opened the door. No one was there. The porch was empty, and the street beyond was eerily silent. A cold breeze rustled the fake cobwebs, making them shimmer under the streetlights. "Hello?" I called out, stepping onto the porch. No response. I shrugged it off, blaming some bored kids playing a prank. But as I turned to go back inside, something caught my eye. A piece of paper folded neatly on the welcome mat. Curious, I picked it up and unfolded it. It was blank. I flipped it over looking for some sort of message, but there was nothing. Just an empty white piece of paper. Shaking my head, I tossed it in the trash and locked the door. The night gets stranger. I had just settled onto the couch when I heard it. A soft knock on the window. It was so faint I almost thought I imagined it. My heart skipped a beat as I turned toward the front window, but the curtains were drawn, and I couldn't see anything. Another knock. Louder this time. I slowly stood up, my pulse quickening. "Who's there?" I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. No answer. I peeked through the curtains, but the street outside was empty. The only thing I could see was my jack-o'-lantern, its flame extinguished, leaving its face in shadow. I was about to turn away when I saw it. A figure, standing just beyond the pool of light, cast by the street lamp. It was tall and motionless, draped in what looked like a long, dark cloak. I couldn't make out any details. Its face was hidden in shadow, but it was staring directly at my house. My throat tightened. I stepped back, letting the curtain fall shut. "It's just someone messing around," I muttered to myself, trying to stay calm. "It's Halloween. People play pranks." But deep down, I didn't believe that. The uninvited visitor. I tried to distract myself, turning on the TV and flipping through channels. But no matter how loud the volume, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. And then the doorbell rang again. This time, I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my phone, ready to call the police, and approached the door cautiously. "Who is it?" I shouted through the door. No answer. I looked through the peephole. The figure was standing on my porch. Up close, I could see the cloak more clearly. It was tattered and damp, like it had been dragged through mud. The figure's face was still hidden, but I could see its hands, pale and thin, with long, jagged fingernails. "Go away!" I shouted, my voice shaking. The figure didn't move. It just stood there, its head tilting slightly, as if studying me. I backed away from the door, clutching my phone. "I'm calling the police!" I yelled. As I dialed, the doorbell rang again, and again, and again. The sound was relentless, echoing through the house like a scream. The chase. The moment the dispatcher picked up, the doorbell stopped. 911, what's your emergency? I tried to explain what was happening, but before I could finish, the knocking started. Not on the front door, on the windows. It was coming from every direction. Soft taps at first, then louder, more insistent. "Someone's trying to get into my house!" I shouted into the phone, my voice cracking. "Stay on the line," the dispatcher said. "Officers are on their way." I clung to the phone like a lifeline, backing into the living room. The knocking was everywhere now. Windows, doors, even the walls. It was deafening, surrounding me, closing in. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, it stopped. The silence was worse. My breath came in shallow gasps as I waited, phone pressed to my ear. "They're here," the dispatcher said. "Go to the front door and let them in." I ran to the door and flung it open, expecting to see flashing lights and uniformed officers. But the street was empty. "No one's here," I whispered. "Ma'am," the dispatcher said, her voice urgent. "Stay inside and lock the door. Officers are still en route." I slammed the door shut and locked it, my hands trembling. That's when I heard it, a voice low and rasping, coming from the other side of the door. "You can't hide from me." The escape. I don't remember much after that. I ran out the back door, sprinting through the yard and into the street. I didn't stop until I reached my neighbor's house, pounding on their door like a mad woman. They let me in, and I collapsed on their floor, shaking and sobbing. The police arrived minutes later. They searched my house and the surrounding area, but found nothing. No footprints, no signs of forced entry, no cloaked figure. The aftermath. I moved out the next day. I never found out who or what was tormenting me that night. But every year when Halloween rolls around, I can't help but wonder, was it just a prank gone too far? Or was it something else? Something that comes out only on the 31st of October. What would you have done if you were in my shoes? Would you have stayed in the house or run immediately? Have you ever experienced anything unexplainable on Halloween? Share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear it. Do you think Halloween is just fun and games? Or is there something truly supernatural about this time of year? If this story sent chills down your spine, hit that like button and share it with someone who loves Halloween. Don't forget to subscribe for more terrifying tales. And remember, if someone knocks on your door late at night on Halloween, don't open it. Imagine hearing footsteps in your house late at night when you're supposed to be alone. What would you do? Investigate or run for your life? This is a story about what I did, and I still can't explain what happened. It all started on an unassuming Friday night. I had just wrapped up an exhausting work week and couldn't wait to sink into my couch with a glass of wine and a good movie. Outside, the weather was miserable. A storm howled through the neighborhood, rattling windows and pelting rain against the glass. My husband, Matt, was out of town for work, leaving me alone in our quiet 2-story home. Normally I loved the solitude, but that night the house felt different, cold, empty, like it was holding its breath. I brushed off the uneasy feeling as the product of a long week and poured myself some wine, lighting a few candles to chase away the shadows. Socks, our tabby cat, curled up by my feet, and Luna, my black cat, perched on the windowsill, staring intently into the rain. I picked a true crime documentary, something to keep my mind occupied, but halfway through, I heard it. A thump. It was faint, barely audible over the storm, but distinct enough to make me pause the TV. I looked around. Socks was snoring, and Luna hadn't moved from her perch. My logical brain tried to explain it away. Houses make noises, especially in bad weather. Then it came again. Thump, thump. This time, it was unmistakable. Footsteps, slow, heavy. They were coming from upstairs. My heart leapt into my throat. Our house was small, and we didn't have any guests. The alarm system hadn't gone off, and both doors were locked. I told myself it had to be the storm, maybe a branch hitting the roof, but deep down, I knew that wasn't it. I muted the TV, straining to hear. Thump. The sound moved, deliberate, measured, down the upstairs hallway. It was coming closer to the staircase. "Hello?" I called out, my voice shaky. No answer. Every muscle in my body tensed. I grabbed my phone and started to text Matt. "I think someone's in the house." But before I could hit send, the footsteps stopped. The silence was deafening, stretching out for what felt like hours. I stayed frozen, my phone clutched in one hand, my eyes locked on the dark staircase. I should have called the police. That's what any rational person would do. But instead I grabbed the heaviest thing within reach, a metal candle holder, and crept toward the stairs. My phone flashlight sliced through the darkness as I climbed. Each step felt like it took an eternity. When I reached the top, the hallway stretched out before me, the doors to the bedrooms and bathroom ajar. I stood there, trembling, listening. The footsteps started again. But this time they weren't coming from the hallway. They were behind me. I whipped around, nearly dropping the flashlight. There was no one there, just the dark staircase leading back down to the living room. My breathing was ragged. I wanted to run, to get out of the house, but something compelled me to stay. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe it was stupidity. The sound shifted again. This time, it came from the master bedroom at the end of the hall. Slowly, I walked toward it. The air felt heavy, suffocating. I pushed the door open, expecting, praying, to find nothing. The room was empty. I stood there, my pulse pounding in my ears, convincing myself it was all in my head. Maybe the storm really was playing tricks on me. Maybe I was overtired. And then I heard it. A voice. Low, guttural, and impossible to mistake. "You shouldn't be here," I screamed, stumbling backward into the hallway. My phone slipped from my hand, the flashlight clattering to the floor and casting wild, flickering shadows. The footsteps returned, this time impossibly fast, chasing me. I bolted down the stairs, my candle holder forgotten, my only thought to get out. But when I reached the front door, it wouldn't open. The deadbolt was locked, though I could swear I had unlocked it earlier. My hands fumbled with the lock, and just as I got it open, the power went out. Darkness swallowed the house. I ran outside, rain drenching me instantly. The wind roared in my ears, but I didn't stop. I sprinted barefoot across the yard to my neighbor's house, banging on their door until they answered. The police arrived minutes later. They searched every room, every closet, even the attic. They didn't find anyone or anything. No signs of forced entry, no muddy footprints, nothing. But I know what I heard. The backstory. The house had always been strange. Little things, doors creaking open on their own, lights flickering, the feeling of being watched. Matt always laughed it off, blaming faulty wiring or the house settling. But I remembered something the previous owner had said when we bought the place. She'd hesitated just for a moment before handing over the keys. "You might hear things," she'd said, her voice tight. "Old houses have memories." I'd brushed it off at the time, thinking she was just being sentimental, but now I wondered if she'd meant something else. The aftermath, I couldn't go back. Not that night, not ever. Matt came home the next day, and we stayed at a hotel while we figured out what to do. A week later, we sold the house. I didn't care about the financial loss. I just wanted out. I never told the new owners what happened. To this day, I don't know what I experienced. Was it a ghost, a warning, or something darker? All I know is that I'll never forget the voice, the footsteps, or the overwhelming sense that I wasn't alone. If you were in my shoes, would you have gone upstairs or run out immediately? Have you ever had a similar experience? Share your story in the comments. I want to hear it. Do you believe old houses can hold memories? Or do you think there's a logical explanation for everything? Thanks for watching. If this story gave you chills, hit that like button and subscribe for more terrifying tales. And remember, if you hear footsteps in your house when you're alone, you might not be as alone as you think.